Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for spending part of your day with us. We'll be kicking off shortly. All right, let's get this started. Quick intro about myself. My name is Chong Lulei. I'm a senior product marketing manager at Bitsight. We have people joining from a lot of different places in the industry today. Nilaf already had this suggestion in the chat, but if you haven't, please drop into the chat that about where you're dialing from. Also, what is your hard truth of the in the 2026? I've seen people from Chicago, Dallas, Brazil. Hi, welcome. Austin, Florida. Please keep them coming. Meantime, today's session is designed to be very conversational, practical, and honest. We are going to talk about what's actually changing in third-party risk right now, especially in the context of AI, supply chain complexity, and the Mythos effect. Hopefully leave you with a few ideas that you can take straight back into your own programs. A couple of housekeeping things before we get into the topic. First of all, we always get asked this question. The session will be recorded, so we'll send it to you afterward. No need to take notes. There's a couple of tabs on your view that can help you further take advantage of this webinar. So you probably are using the chat, which is on your right side of the screen. Then there is a Docs tab, which are all the free resources that you can download or leverage. There is also a Q&A, which is the third tab. I want to make sure that you're aware of it, but this is where we receive all the questions. In some of past webinars, folks tend to send a question in the last 10 minutes or so, which potentially might need to not get your question answers. So anytime during the conversation, if you have a question, please do not hesitate to send it, and we will try to get them answered. Anything else? If you have any technical hiccup, feel free to send in the chat, and the amazing Nilofar in the back end will help you as well. One more thing. You will see there's a button in the top right of this page called Talk to a Business Expert. This is really easy for you to connect with someone who's well-versed in, all the things we're going to talk about, but also the solution of Bitsight. How does that help you to address your immediate challenge and hard truth? So make sure you leverage that if you want to as well. Now, if we can go down to the next slide. Want to give you a quick intro of who we are in case this is the first time you join us. So Bitsight is a global leader in cyber risk intelligence. We help organizations get real-time visibility, which is very timely, into their own cyber risk and the risk coming through their third and fourth party ecosystem. We work with more than 3,600 customers, and we have 75,000 organizations active on the program. I pause a little bit because this number always grows, so I just need to check my mind note, what's the latest number? All this gives us what we believe is the industry most extensive external cybersecurity data set. In plain terms, if you're managing third-party risk, we help you see what's exposed, prioritize what matters, and act before something breaks. Now let's go to the next one. Like I mentioned earlier, there is a doc tab in the middle right side of your screen that has a lot of free resources, which include things that we're showing here. So if you want to go deeper on where Bitsight fits in the market, where it comes to third-party risk, there's the natural question of what solution is best positioned to help you tackle the challenges we're going to cover today. Some of the really good report from independent, analyst firm are, Gartner and Forrester. So we have the Forrester Wave Cyber Risk Rating Platforms report, as well as the Gartner Magic Quadrant for Cyber Threat Intelligence. Both are available and give you more detail of how Bitsight can help you with your specific challenge. So feel free to take a look. And then let's go to the next one. So really, this will spend the majority of time today to discuss the three hard truths. One is the dependency of supply chain. We have some stats that just went live this morning that we want to share with you. We definitely want to talk about AI because at least half of the response you gave in chat is about AI, so we'll definitely cover that. And then the other sort of pressing topic is the ownership of TPRM within the org. Let's go next. I can't wait to introduce the speakers. Super excited for who are going to join me today. First is Julie Gayaki, CEO and co-founder of the Third-Party Risk Association. Julie has spent years building third-party security programs across healthcare and financial services, and she's become one of the strongest voices in the TPRM community on operational resilience and practitioner collaboration. Julie, please join me on the stage. One thing I also want to call out is TPRA, I think in April did their annual conference. I heard a lot of good things about it. It is very collaborative and helpful and resourceful for the third-party risk professionals. So I just want to give it a shout out. And then I want to invite the next speaker, which is Vanessa Jankowski, SVP of Product Management for TPRM here at Bitsight. Vanessa leads our TPRM business and brings a really unique lens on how organizations operationalize threat intelligence, exposure management, and risk prioritization at scale. Julie, Vanessa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. And don't worry about the last name. Everyone gets it wrong, but it's Gayowski.
So. Gayowski.
Yep.
Thank you.
And thanks, Chung. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. All right. We will dive into the first topic really soon, but just really before that, we want to talk about Mythos, which is probably everybody has been reading nowadays in the past couple of weeks. Just really quick. So what is it and what does it mean for us? So for a really long time, defenders had a gap between when a vulnerability was discovered and when it could realistically be exploited. And what AI or particularly Mythos and other frontier AI models is doing is collapsing this gap. In third-party risk, it matters even more for us because we're not defending one parameter anymore. The risk surface now includes vendors, the AI providers, the software dependencies, layers over layers deeper that organizations themselves can't fully see. So today's conversation isn't really just about, or really about preventing breaches, the idea of focusing on prevention. It is about whether your program can adapt faster enough when the speed and the shape of risk fundamentally changes. All right, there's a lot of talking. Let's get into the first topic. All right, the first hard truth. So I think most people in this audience already feel it intuitively. So organizations today aren't just managing vendors. They are operating inside interconnected ecosystem. Every new sector, the AI providers, integrations, outsourced workflow adds another layer of dependency. It's not just the scale, it's hidden concentration risk. And I want to go, if we could go to the next slide, this is something that Vanessa and I have been chatting this morning. The Verizon data breach report just went live a couple of hours ago, just today. And it really makes the urgency impossible to ignore. Some of the stats that caught our eyes were there 48% of breaches now involve a third party, which is a 60% year-over-year growth. And then when the third-party event happened, it doesn't stay contained. The average incident creates 5.28 downstream victims. One breach, 5.5 organizations will be affected. The report also found that 48% of the breaches include ransomware in the attack chain. And the number one initial access factor is the exploitation of vulnerabilities, up 55% year over year. So not phishing, it's vulnerabilities in your vendors, in your dependency and your supply chain. So, which raises the question I think a lot of TPRM leaders are sitting with. And we want to know how you are thinking about this question now. So if we can pull the first poll, for the audience, please. How confident are you in your organization's visibility into just the dependency, not just on the third party, but fourth and nth party? Give us a sense of how confident you feel about your program's visibility. And we're looking, the response are coming in. We're seeing, it's a good news, a positive. We're seeing over 50% votes are giving somewhat confident, which is great. Julie, Vanessa, I want to start with Julie. Julie, does this sort of resonate with how you would feel or hear from, all the third-party risk professionals that you've been speaking with?
Yeah, honestly, I expected the percentages to be more in limited visibility or not sure. So the fact that some of this is somewhat confident, I'm wondering if a lot of these are financial institutions. I think they're a little bit ahead of the game. They've been looking at nth-party risk for a while now, but I hear a lot of struggle with really trying to even identify who their material third parties are and the impacts they have on their third party. So it's well, now it's starting to go more towards limited visibility. So Vanessa?
Yeah, curious. I had the same assumption. I figured we'd be pretty heavily concentrated in limited visibility, or honestly not sure. Yeah. I think typically when we look outside of financial institutions or outside of regulated industries, what we see is that most companies sort of recognize this as a problem to solve, but not something that they really have a robust program around. And I think this is becoming first of all, more problematic. I think the statistics, Chunglu, that you shared from the Verizon data breach study are good evidence that the risk is real there. And so being able to get to clear identification of third parties, fourth parties, and beyond is obviously essential. But I think the sort of stakes involved are getting clearer as well, which may be what we're seeing sort of drive up the maturity level, drive up the sort of overall program level emphasis on doing that identification and mapping. So again, I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah. And I wish we're in person, because if we're in person, I'm going to pass the mic to the 7% of folks who voted very confident and just learn from them how they have been managed their program, right? But let's go to the questions. Thanks. We can take the poll down now. And I would love to see our speakers in a larger screen. Hopefully you enjoyed the experience. But let's talk a little bit more on the dependency. So I want to start with Julie. When you talk with all the practitioners that come to TPRA, how much does the expanding dependency and the nth-party visibility, all the things that we talk about, show in the report that we just surfaced, how does that resonate? And one more. Practically, how are organizations moving beyond, the static annual views and process towards something more continuous?
Yeah, so I think nth-party risk has always been a problem, and I think AI is kind of exacerbating that. It's really no longer a creation of a vendor inventory. It's more creation of a digital ecosystem that we're trying to work through. Because we now have critical services, cloud infrastructure that we've had for a while, subcontractors with major dependencies. We have the open source dependencies, data processors, fourth-party platforms. And when you're weaving in AI into that, then it just gets a bit convoluted. So I think that there just is more interdependency. There's real concentration risk. And some of the trends that I've seen personally are managed service providers subcontracting out some of their more specialized functions. I've also seen a lot of AI and data processing systems introducing invisible downstream data sharing relationships. So a lot of it's visible, but you're seeing a lot more invisible, because I think today we should just all assume all third parties and their nth parties are leveraging AI in some way. Maybe that's not directly within the service or product you're being provided, but maybe it is. And so just the transparency around it all is very confusing. From an operational standpoint, though, some of the things that we can do are really start to look more at those critical third parties. And what moves a third party from high risk to critical is that it can dramatically impact your organization, meaning if that third party were to go down, you could not perform specific services. So that's kind of what moves it from a high risk to a critical third party. Really focusing on those first, and then you can move into the high risk. That's first, and then really determining materiality of nth parties. I think we get stuck on trying to do all the nth parties and go down a rabbit hole, but it's impossible to do that. So what I personally suggest when we're talking about materiality is, first and foremost, if you can't do anything else, follow the data. And then second, you can ask, does the nth party support a critical process or service that my third party is providing me? You can ask if there's regulatory impact or if they are customer facing, and that can be direct or indirect. So those 4 questions are really what I personally ask when it comes to nth party risk. I think also, and we'll get more into this, we need to move from more vendor management to dependency mapping. So not just saying, who are my nth parties, but where are the dependencies for this service or product or for my critical process? And I think if we take that mindset, then we can get better information for reviewing nth parties. So shifting from periodic assessments as well to more continuous monitoring, because it's going to be impossible to do reviews for nth parties. You don't contract with them. You can ask your third party for TPRM, program assessment type activities, but you're really going to get more bang for your buck if you can actually see the risk in your nth parties. And the only way to do that without sending an assessment is continuous monitoring. So I know that was a lot, but really determining materiality, mapping dependencies, and then reviewing via continuous monitoring.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And particularly when you say the mapping dependency, sometimes we call that business context or business impacts, basically understanding a particular vendor, not treat it as a standalone company, but like understand what it does for you, what data does it have access to, and how in the worst case, how much sort of harm it can potentially do, so we can understand the risk. So I think that's very interesting to call out. And I'm curious about Vanessa's point too, and particularly I want to call out that, so one thing that's interesting is there's a lot of sort of call to action from, the analyst, the expert of the industry, as well as Julie and the TPRA is like calling this transition from, periodic assessment to continuous monitoring. Bitsight has been helping customers with continuous monitoring for over a decade. Like, how does that trend do you see anything different in terms of where the customer want to focus, invest on? What's your take? And I'm curious, like, what is your POV on this?
Sure. I think there are two major themes that I would call out. The first one is just to echo what Julie described, which is essentially looking at business context as a way of prioritizing and saying, when you're looking at an attack surface that is inclusive of your third parties, your fourth parties, your nth parties, suddenly you have a problem of scale, right? You have a real challenge in sort of keeping up with the pure volume of vendors and third-party dependencies and fourth-party dependencies, and the list goes on. And then as the sort of actual problem states and the issues that you run into with each of those vendors expands and grows because of things like Mythos, because of some of the sort of advancements we're seeing in AI, in the sort of attack landscape overall, your ability to manage that becomes harder. And so the ability to apply business context and use that really as a filter to say, here's where we're going to focus, here's what really matters to our business, allows you to overcome some of that scale challenge in a way that allows you to get both better confidence in the things that you're focused on, but also better outcomes in terms of your ability to actually manage risks and threats that are happening in real time. I think that's the second big thing I would mention. There is a real opportunity, I think, in front of us to kind of steer our focus toward the downstream part of the process. And so a lot of third-party risk programs are steered toward a point-in-time assessment. They're focused on a periodic look at a vendor to say, what are their policies? What does their program look like? What is that sort of overall plan that they have in order to manage their own security and risk? As Julie mentioned, the ability to actually see risk as it evolves, see the threats that are cropping up, in the moment allows you to get a little bit more control over the situation. Not because you have direct control over it, but it allows you to be in a position of resilience because you have the opportunity to sort of see things as they're unfolding, as opposed to understanding what's happened after the fact, or understanding only in one moment in time what the overall posture looked like. And so the ability to kind of see things as they evolve, because they are evolving very quickly, as we all know, gives you another type of superpower. It allows you to take agency over the situation in front of you in a way that hasn't always been possible. So it's really exciting, but again, really, really big opportunity and really big need there in terms of how continuous monitoring can shape the program. And then we talked about Mythos a little bit. I would just say that for those of you who aren't sort of like fully embedded in that or fully up to speed on it, the thing that I think worries a lot of folks who are spending time thinking about Mythos is the fact that it changes the time dimension dramatically in terms of vulnerability detection and exploitation, to the point that we're talking about moments from one step to the other. And what that means is that when you look across your own organization, you're already dealing with that sort of change of pace. You're already grappling with how do we respond fast enough to the vulnerabilities on our own perimeter. But when you sort of apply that to that broader extended ecosystem, the whole problem blows up. It's too many vulnerabilities, it's too many vendors, it's too many third and fourth party dependencies. And so your ability to kind of bring that all together really depends on your ability to see things more broadly and detect them, and then be in a position to respond in a timely way. So
this is super helpful, and we'll, like Vanessa said, we'll dive into that a little bit more down the road. But before we do that, I want to drill in on what Julie said about sort of the mapping dependency, or in some other terms, the business context. Particularly in, there is, I think, not only the business context, but also if we think about, we got a lot of signals, we got a lot of data. What are the signals that we should be acting on? Business context is definitely a very important one, because it defines the criticality of the relationship. But also the other thing is, what are actually potentially, there's a lot of vulnerabilities out there. What are potentially actually being exploited versus all the things that's just placed there and nobody's touching it? So that's another angle. There has been a lot of talk about threat intelligence this year. Bitsight is one of them. But I want to start with Julie in this topic. Is when you talk about threat intelligence and know that what role it can potentially play in the third party risk management space, what do you think the team should think about, depending on the maturity of the program? Because obviously every team has different focus,
right?
From the low maturity or the middle maturity, we say, to the more advanced maturity, that would treat it differently. What would be your take on that?
Yeah. I actually want to focus on something that Vanessa said about resilience. So just to summarize what she said, it's not that we're working on perfect visibility, because that's impossible, but the focus really should be more on resilience. With everything happening, with what she mentioned, Mythos, and just concentration risk and so much going on, regulations, it's sometimes hard to get around assessing and mitigating. And so sometimes we also have to really focus on that resilience perspective. And so with regards to threat intelligence specifically, I think that can really help us put operational resiliency more into action. So it's incredibly powerful, threat intelligence, but really it needs to align with your maturity. So what I mean by that is it needs to move from more of a awareness perspective, a visibility perspective, to prioritization, and eventually becoming predictive. So prioritization meaning really focusing on your more critical processes. And again, with those dependency mappings, understanding what vendors are critical to you and what processes they're performing are critical to you. And then really mapping that to the threat intelligence that you're receiving, as well as in conjunction with the assessments that you're doing that really look into the environment itself. Because some threat intelligence It's looking on the outside of the third party, of your third party ecosystem. And then your assessments are really looking in the third party ecosystem. So if you kind of marry those two, then you can start to correlate, okay, with these vulnerabilities that I'm seeing, this third party is more likely to be breached based on their control infrastructure. So starting to use some of the threat intelligence to not only prioritize your actions, working with your threat intelligence team, your incident response team to start ensuring that third parties are included in their incident response playbooks, and that you have pathways and communication avenues for if something were to happen, but also making sure that you're speaking to and collaborating with your third parties whenever you see something as well. So it's kind of more of a using threat intelligence to be more collaborative. I think we can do this within our own companies and with third parties. So breaking those silos between what third party risk management used to be versus what it's becoming, and talking more to your InfoSec teams and your incident response teams and making third-party risk management everyone's responsibility, because it is. Also using that threat intelligence to really what you're doing is bridging the gap between the more technical language to the business language. So sharing with your business owners what these threats really mean, how they can impact, and also making sure that you're including that operational resilience piece. So putting it into the playbook, making sure you have incident response. So it can be used for a more well-rounded, robust program that really drives operational resiliency and more value for your organization.
Yeah, and I was just thinking when you say the sort of translating between the technical language versus the business language, that topic can take a whole webinar, I feel. So there's a lot of work in there. For sure. Vanessa, is there anything?
I think that's our responsibility. I think that we're best positioned to be that bridge. So if you're not working with your information security teams or your other teams, this is the value you can provide to them.
That's right. And I think the couple things I would just expand on. Threat intelligence does have the opportunity to be a little bit of that connective tissue because it operates on the same plane that some of those more operational security teams currently operate. And so a lot of the sort of traditional methods of third-party risk management are point in time, happened maybe months ago. But when we start to talk about threat intelligence and what's happening in the threat landscape right this second, the ability to kind of pull that to the forefront and say, hey, this affects one of our Julie defined all the things that can make a vendor critical. We're looking at a critical vendor. We're looking at an attack that's happening right now that was just announced on the dark web. How do you use that to sort of influence the operational risk activities that your team takes on? How do you use that to say, hey, we have an opportunity to shape, if not the sort of outcome of that event or the sort of unfolding of what's happening with that vendor, we have an opportunity to sort of take a moment internally and say, are there things that we need to do to protect ourselves in this moment? Is there something that we need to disconnect? Is there a conversation we need to have with the vendor to make sure that we are protected, or to confirm that we're in a good position because of other controls that we have in place?
Right.
But with an understanding of that sort of like your real-time view of what's happening right now, again, not just because of what your vendor has done, but because of what's happening around them. It gives them a lot of power and a lot of opportunity to sort of, again, bridge that gap in a way that not only helps from an organizational perspective, but also really helps in terms of the outcomes for your organization. The other thing that I would just kind of maybe restate from the last question was around using threat intelligence as another thing to help with prioritization in this moment in time when we have a numbers problem. You have a lot of different data points all coming together. Business context is one really useful filter to say, here's what matters most, here's what we're going to prioritize. Threat intelligence and some of the predictive capabilities that Julie mentioned are other opportunities to do better prioritization. They can help say, here's what matters now because of the exploitation patterns that we're seeing on the dark web. This is what matters now because this is where threat actors are focused. This is what matters now because these are the vulnerabilities that threat actor group X, Y, or Z is attacking in this particular sector or space. And so being able to kind of connect the dots between those things and the understanding of where you have third-party exposure to specific vulnerabilities or where you've got concentration risk that's rooted in a fourth party that maybe has a security posture that you're concerned about or is a frequent victim of threat actor groups. Those are all things that help you sort of create the plan that says, here's where our team is going to spend our limited time and effort, because that's where we're going to get the most bang for our buck in terms of, again, ability to be resilient, ability to have stronger outcomes from a third-party risk perspective. So lots of really interesting things happening in that space has been a big focus for us at Bitsight, because we see the potential to kind of bring all these different factors together in a way that's cohesive and allows for, again, at the end of the day, an ability to really prioritize in this place where it's challenging to do that.
Yeah, totally. And this is aligned with what we hear from like Forrester Wave and other analysts too, is at the end of the day, our job is to orchestrate all the intelligence and do right decision making and be able to communicate across the board why we're making such a decision and why we're prioritize certain things over the other. This will probably resonate a lot with the audience, because I see in the chat, Josh is like, if I hear you right or read you right, you're asking like a dedicated session to deep dive on this topic in the future. We'll take a note, and thanks for the advice. But let's move on for the sake of time. Let's move on to the next topic. In the beginning, and Vanessa also explained a little bit more on sort of how we are viewing the meso effects. If we can go down one more, because I want to make sure we have the more time for Julie and Vanessa to share thoughts. But just to give you a really quick example of how AI is accelerating and basically closing the gap between vulnerabilities being detected versus being exploited. LightAOM, you might have heard of it. It's a widely used AI gateway. So early this year, compromised version of this package were published with malicious code that harvest the credentials and enabled lateral movement in the cloud environments. So it's really making that strong awareness of, okay, the time to exploitation has become zero. You have to really act fast. And to be able to act fast, you need existing sort of good playbook or good system in place so you can take the actions confidently. Let's pull up the poll and again, hear from you how you feel about this topic. We talk about AI, but we also want to take a step and say, okay, we know AI is accelerating the challenges, not really changing the challenges. Does that resonate with you? To understand that, we want to know what is your biggest concern for your third-party risk program today. Of course, underlying on which we're trying to understand how does AI changes that perception. But let's look at what you say. We have options of limited visibility into supply chain. This has always been challenging. Lack of risk context and prioritization. This might be more to what Josh mentioned in the chat. Silo, cyber, and TPRA teams. Julie mentioned this, like collaborating across the board, and unclear executive risk reporting. Looks like we're getting relatively equivalent on the top three. And then the limited visibility is driving a little bit more. But what does the result say to you, Julie? Anything you want to share based on how the audience is feeling about, the major challenge for third parties today?
Yeah, I think this definitely resonates specifically with that limited visibility into supply chain, and particularly in retail manufacturing as well. They're, I feel like, just starting to come to the table from a TPRM perspective. But this isn't just about products, it's about technology as well. And so I think what's really difficult if you're more focused on cyber is understanding how things are made. Understanding, where the code's coming from and where the development is happening. And there's a risk to that. And I think we're going to start to see a little bit more S-bombs and AI bombs to really kind of parse some of that information out so that we can have that better visibility. We're going to talk a little bit more about the AI transparency risk. I think there's big risk there, but lack of risk context, prioritization, and siloed cyber teams has always been an issue.
Anything you would like to add, Vanessa?
I would just call out the comment from Neil in the chat around workload and overhead being another challenge. That's I think a confluence of things here, but the ability to sort of look at all of these things, and then you have that additional layer of teams that are historically limited, they're resource constrained, the sort of problems on their plate, the workload on their plate is getting bigger, creates another challenge to grapple with.
Yeah, which is very timing. And if we can close the poll so we can go to the next question, which is very timing because we're talking about AI. For me, this is a little bit cliche in terms of how I frame it, but I think AI is a double-edged sword. Sorry about the very cliche term. But on the one side, we're talking about, AI can potentially help accelerate the sort of the automation, really making sure that, we are spending our energy focused on what matters the most versus like doing the manual work. And of course, Vanessa, I know you have more to share in terms of what you think the next step. AI can really help orchestrate, intelligence and data, not just stay on the paperwork. But I know a lot of folks today is really caring about that transparency in terms of AI. This is also resonate with, what we've been hearing is the major concern about this AI era, post-Mythos era, aside from, vulnerabilities become very easy to detect, is the disruption that AI or the use of AI potentially will introduce to your organization. So I want to start with Julie. So in terms of AI governance, what have you been seeing? Is it mostly, adding the AI language to a contract? Are there other best practice or good practice you've been seeing? I'm curious what you've seen.
Yeah. I had this conversation at our last conference, and I just kept thinking in my head, technology and risk for AI are moving faster than governance. And usually we have more time to wrap our head around certain technologies and really implement processes and governance, and we just don't have the time right now. So I am seeing organizations at least start trying to learn what AI even is. I mean, that's where we're at, and it's moving faster than that. So I think that's a great place to start. I think not just your TPRM teams, but your entire organization really needs to have a better understanding of what AI is and what AI is not. Because there are some organizations marketing themselves as AI and they're really just bots. And so that's first. Second, I've seen, starting with the contracts, which I think is an important place to start. I think you want to set expectations of your third parties to make sure that they are telling you when they're implementing AI or adding additional functionality. There's the whole issue around data governance, and if your data is being used to train the models. There's also, discussion around, okay, if I give you my data and I do allow you to train the models, if I ever disengage with you, you can give me the original data back, but then there's that residual influence. So my data has already been used to train the models. So contracts just need to be a little bit clearer about data governance, also around models and training them, and then output. So is this AI being used to make decisions? Is there human in the loop? Has it been tested for bias and fairness? How can we rely on the output of the AI? And I think what we've seen in the past, in the very beginning of AI coming into products and services, is it was being used to make decisions, and even some banks got in trouble because they were using it to make loan decisions and not considering certain cultural perspectives. And so those banks actually got fined because they denied loans that they normally would not have denied. So we just need to be mindful of the governance and the output and the models themselves. I think from a maturity perspective, we can focus more on the data, but also have a better understanding of the different types of AI. So start to risk tier AI to understand what it's actually doing and within what products and services. Because a third party can tell you, hey, I'm using AI, but maybe it's Zoom Assistant and you don't really care about that. But maybe it's in the product and it's either, being used to make decisions or, other things. So really need to focus on what it's doing and the type it's using. And like we said earlier, the real problem is transparency. We can do all the training, we can do all the contract writing, but for us, we are tasked with assessing. And right now, there's no clear standard for AI metrics, and we don't even know what to ask for half the time. So really trying to get an understanding of what they're doing is, number one, but how they're doing it is number two. And it is technology still. So we do need to test it. We need to make sure that there are controls in place to test the data coming in, the data going out, the models, the bias and fairness and things like that. It's just unclear how. So I think that's where we're at right now. But I do think there is hope with using AI to help us test some of this.
Yeah, and I would just maybe add that the other thing that you want to do from an AI perspective, because things are moving so fast and because there's both the models themselves are changing quickly, the rate of adoption is changing quickly. We're sort of progressing through these waves of generative AI to agentic AI, and they all have different implications and different risks attached to them depending on what they're doing and what their role is within your organization. But one thing that I think we've seen more of our customers do at Bitsight is start to treat some of those AI adoption cases as part of the attack surface, and being able to discover them and to continuously monitor usage of different AI models on internet-facing assets and help you understand, what does this mean to me in terms of the possibility, not just of data leaking or not just of sort of the company using AI, but if there are places where it's exposed in a way that it should not be, that presents a different type of risk that you need to be sort of mindful of. So another opportunity for us, I think, to think about how TPRM is changing in the wake of AI adoption.
Agree.
Yeah. And then this is something I know both of you also handle or consult to is, all right, now we have vulnerabilities, we have access to all the raw CV data and everything. Do we now with the time of Mythos, what do we do? Do we patch everything? Do we somewhat prioritize over? I know we talk about evaluating the critical sort of the criticality of a vendor. How do you work? Whether you're actually exposed, but just want to sort of dive into that a little bit more so that we walk away from this, have a clear understanding of what we could take action on as a first step.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Julie.
I think there's a theme here with this whole discussion, and it's operational resiliency. And I think that's where we need to stay definitely this year, but in the future. And I think Mythos is only validating that we need to adopt a more threat-informed resilience strategy. And threat-informed meaning using business intelligence, using threat intelligence to feed into our resiliency plans. We need to understand how exploitable we are, and Mythos is helping with that. We need to really understand the business impact. And I don't know if we've really done a good job of that in the past, of really understanding what our business is doing and the impact the third party could have on those specific critical processes. I think we need to get more clear on the attack path and determine if something were to happen, what would be the fallback plan? Are we segmented enough? Is our network exposed in certain areas? Do we have containment strategies? And how quickly can we actually recover? And so, yes, from our own personal perspective, but also from the third party perspective. So, of course, this is just going to amplify the risk. But the good news is it's not, available to everyone right now. It's, part of that project. And so there's specific companies and also the government that's testing it out. And that's for a reason. So Vanessa, what were you going to add? Sorry.
I was literally trying to pull up the Verizon data breach report that was published this morning, because it talks about the sort of patch trends that they see. And I think the thing that Chunglu started with was, hey, should we be patching everything? The answer is we probably shouldn't rely on that, because the sort of overall time to patch is getting slower and slower and slower. And I think the part of that again is because there's this sort of challenge of numbers. And so I think what you said, Julie, around, pulling together the different pieces of intelligence that help you say sort of comprehensively, here are the priorities based on what we're seeing in terms of exploitability, in terms of exposure happening now, in terms of what's important to the business and how the threat landscape can kind of feed into that. I think that's a huge opportunity. And that's also something that AI can help us with. And so being able to kind of leverage AI in this sort of productive, proactive way to say, let's pull all this information together in a really seamless way to help point the way to the roadmap for the program and say, here's where we're going to focus, here's where we're going to spend our energy, driving that remediation effort with our vendors in a way that allows us to sort of limit the exposure to our own organization, but also, again, help us be more productive in certain of these cases.
Exactly.
Totally. We have time for, let's do one more question, and we can take questions from the audience. We have plenty of them. But Julie, you mentioned that there's a lot in this is about collaboration. But I wonder, sometimes it's become, I don't know if scope creep is the right word, but it's sometimes there's some ambiguity in terms of who owns third-party risk, which team does what, how do we make sure that everybody's aligned and on board and moving forward effectively? What's your take on how CISO and third-party risk leaders to take approach this as third-party risks become more and more important to the organization?
Yeah, I preach this daily, that third-party risk is an organization-wide activity and everyone should own a part of it. The part where organizations get a little hung up is the role of clear decision rights, like what decision rights does each line have? So in my personal opinion, I think the best way, most effective way to govern third-party risk is to have centralized governance. So a team that's doing, working through the policy, making sure that there is a program and that it's clear. But I think everyone has a role to play in it. So ownership of the risk should be a federated model, basically. So, any of the business owners that are actually using the tools need to understand that they are the risk owners, and that rolls up all the way to their executives. So the executives are the ultimate risk owners as well. And so I get the question, who should own third-party risk management all the time? And that's different than who owns third-party risk. So who owns third-party risk? Everyone. Who owns third-party risk management? It really depends on who cares about it the most. So if you're highly regulated, compliance might care about it, IT might care about it. If you're not as regulated, it might be operations. That's usually who gets it first. What I am seeing a trend, and I really like the way this is going, is the creation of the chief risk officer and having an entire risk office that's enterprise risk management related, but also has spokes. And one of those is third-party risk management. I think that keeps third-party risk management out of the line of business because it really is a check and balance. It's more of an assessment or audit type role. So I think that's good, a good balance of power if it's in a more risk related office versus like IT or procurement. So Vanessa, I don't know if you have thoughts on that as well.
I think I would just maybe come back to the starting point, which is that the sort of level of collaboration that is possible is not generally happening today. We see a lot of sort of breakdowns in the coordination that can happen between functions because it is a shared ownership challenge. Like everyone has some level of impact that they're going to have if there's a third party issue. The challenge though is that there's a little bit of a tragedy of the commons situation where everyone and no one owns it. And so being able to sort of say it's not just the third party risk management team, it's really the business overall that has ownership. And here's what that looks like. And here's how the collaboration works across each of the different functions, I think can make a big difference.
Yeah. And to add to that, because that's a great point, I think us as practitioners, we're service providers. We're not risk owners. So we provide the service to the business to help them identify the risk and sometimes even help validate and resolve it or remediate it, but we're not the ultimate owners. So our job is to communicate the impact and the risk that these third parties have on their organizations. And I think that helps when you frame it like that, like a service mindset instead of an ownership mindset.
Absolutely.
Communication is the key in the art of how you frame frame the challenge as well as the solution, as well as the data you leverage to support those decision as a whole, in my opinion, of our work. Okay, let's take questions because I know people really want to hear from both of you. Okay, let's see. This might be for Vanessa really quick. Is Bitsight able to monitor the types of AI? Because this is probably when we're talking about sort of the benefit of AI. Can Bitsight monitor the types of AI being used by a vendor that we subscribe to?
Yes, so this is one of the investments that we've been making as part of our overall sort of investment in our data engine and our collection and observations that we're making across the internet. One of the things that we've invested heavily in is product fingerprinting of AI technology that we can see on internet-facing assets. And so you're able to look for different AI capabilities that are sort of in place across vendor organizations that you subscribe to. One thing that I can note is that in our continuous monitoring application, just over the next couple of weeks, we'll introduce a dashboard card that sort of distills some of that information up into a higher level view, so you can see portfolio exposure to different types of AI technology that we've detected. It's very cool.
Love that. And then this one is from Elderi. I think this is a question that really resonated with a lot of people, especially like the focus of this year is operational your resilience. How do you connect the dots between continuous monitoring and resiliency, including all vendors in our critical path? How do you make it seamless between these two domains? Maybe Julie can start first.
Yeah, so continuous monitoring plays a role in resiliency. It should feed it. It's more, continuous monitoring is more of what's actually happening versus planning. So resiliency is the planning part where you're performing your incident response tabletop exercises, you're getting your playbooks up to speed, you're understanding where you are in the lineup with your third party, when will you be communicated to, if an incident were to occur. And continuous monitoring is what actually alerts you on if something's actually happening. So you do need both to, better understand one, the impact, but two, how to respond and when to respond. Sometimes, continuous monitoring, if it's not as robust, if you don't have threat intelligence included, then you won't always be monitored. You won't always be alerted. Maybe it'll come through the third party telling someone, or your information security team finding out. So it needs to be a little more robust. Don't just think about it in a silo, but really include different areas of your business into that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I would say is that continuous monitoring it gives you a fighting chance of responding in the moment something needs to happen. And so it can give you a little bit more of an opportunity to be proactive if you see something from the dark web, as an example, or if you see something that is sort of a signal that there is a critical exposure that can be resolved before there's an exploitation and before a bad thing happens. Yeah. So it puts you a little bit more in the driver's seat than you would be if you were relying only on information about things that had already taken place.
I love that you used the word fighting chance.
Yeah.
I know, Julie, you answered one question in the chat already, is what should TPRMs stop doing this year? And you answered point-in-time assessment. I assume it's treating point-in-time assessment as the primary approach or strategy of your... Yeah, awesome. And then we have time for maybe one or two. This is from Ricardo. One common myth is that vendors provide only staff augmentation or support services don't need strong information security controls, as the client manages all access and protection. From a GRC point, what are some expectations should organizations set with this third parties?
So I assume this means staff aug using your organization's equipment, and so the data isn't in their environment or they're not accessing that from that perspective. Is that what that means?
I think we're trying to read this through questions.
I think They're just saying if you've got folks who are sort of providing a service to you because their employees are actually like contributing to your business or your team, there's less concern about information security controls because they're sort of operating in your environment. In terms of the need to access different information within your systems or different tools that you may be using as opposed to bringing their own to the table. That's kind of how I would read it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I would say people are the biggest risk. So it's not just internal employees, it's staff aug as well. And it really depends on where they're located, the rules and regulations around them, because I can't tell you how many times I've done an on-site visit in a international location. They did not have direct access to the data. They used our equipment, but they were taking pictures on their phones of claims information. So there's still a risk. And there still needs to be some type of evaluation, maybe background checks, maybe clean room, visibility of those controls, physical security. So there's always something that you could do specifically with staff aug.
Yeah. I think we have one more question. And before I answer that question, just do want you to know that if we didn't get to answer your questions live, we'll make sure to follow up. So rest assured. Last one is from Ronan. Is there a way for Bitsight to advise us that one of the vendors we monitor has been breached, and how long does it take to propagate?
Good question, Ronan. So Bitsight does have that capability. We have a new feature that we introduced fairly recently called Breach Intelligence that does a really nice job of capturing things that are happening in the moment based on dark web sources like ransomware, forums or leak sites where threat actors are actually posting about what attacks that are going on affecting your vendors. This is included in parallel with validated, verified public disclosure breach indicators that Bitsight captures. So you're able to get a really nice comprehensive view of breaches or security incidents that may affect your vendors, and that's populated in Bitsight on an every 5 minutes basis based on our sort of continuous collection of dark web content. So it's a great feature. We've gotten a lot of great feedback on it.
Nice. Also, this is a great way to remind you that if you want to know more, click that right top little yellow button for you. So you can talk to someone who can tailor, what we offer to what you need. What would be, I know we have 1 minute, what would be sort of the one line or two takeaway from both of you, just in terms of what we're talking? And Vanessa, do you want to start first?
Oh, sure. I'm happy to. This will probably be more than one line, but I think we're at such an interesting time, both in the technology space, the cyber space, the third-party risk space, and the intersection of them, I think, is both a little bit scary and tons of opportunity in front of us. And so I feel really confident about the opportunity for the group of practitioners on the call here to do something really amazing. So I'm excited about it. I think we've got great opportunity in front of us, in spite of the challenges.
Yeah, I would echo that. I would also say that you're not alone doing this. And so there's a lot of collaborative groups that you can join and be a part of discussions and help bring the industry up as a whole. And then the other thing I would just say is we've talked about a lot. Some of it might be scary or overwhelming, but really we're talking about risk reduction. So if you don't just focus so much on, I got to do this and this and this and this and this, but look at your organization as a whole and really focus on what matters and start there.
Amazing. Yeah, really appreciate the time that both of you come today, and as well as everyone join us. Julie, thank you so much for what you do with TPRA. I personally am a huge fan. Please do check them out. And thank you, Vanessa, for sharing what's exciting from the Bitsight. Make sure you learn a little bit more about us. And thank you. We'll see each other until next time.
Thank you.
Everyone, appreciate it.